Ah, great. Is it today? I don't know. Hello, it's me again. I want to talk about these Maun parallel pliers. Reference code is 4876140. They are a half round and flat pair of parallel pliers. I really like them. They are a nice size, sort of heavy enough to bend some really tough metal. What I really like about them, I mean, I say it on all of these Maun pliers, but it's the parallel function. If you're bending up a finer bit of metal, it's less so important. You know, sort of thinner profile metal. But if you're bending something up that is quite wide, the metal has a tendency to sort of bow in the middle. So instead of being flat, the inside will dip down and the outsides will come out. Just because the force, the tension that's in the metal, once it's bent, it's the way that it works. And with a normal pair of half round and flat pliers, I said it before on another thing, it's the function. These will always open into a V. For example, here's quite a wide bit of metal. You'll always have a gap at the top, so you're only bending from the bottom, which is what gives the metal the ability to bow in the middle. So instead of it being, I mean, I know it's not straight or anything like that, but instead of it being a flat piece, it will dip in the middle, and then when you're tidying it up afterwards, you've got to file it all off. I'm not going to say that these completely alleviate that, but they make it a lot better. The other thing that I like about them is a positive and a negative. They've got a really shallow curve. So, you know, your average ring size is like an M, N, all of those is fine. Larger ring sizes is perfect. When you get down to, if you have to, you know, sort of a D, E, F, G, H sort of size, ring sizes, it maybe is a bit too shallow, but the benefit that you have is that on everything else it's brilliant. I've often thought that, you know, the normal half round pliers that you get are a bit steep in gradient of the curve, which allows you to have a very mixed variant of bends, because you don't bend a ring round in like one go. You'll bend, so these half round pliers are, you can use them for a lot of different things, but you know, their main focus is on bending rings up. So obviously the half round side will go inside the ring, the flat would go on the outside, and then you bend into that. With these, because of the shallow curve, it's quite easy to just keep going at that curve, and you'll end up with a nice consistent round shape. I always think it's really important when making rings to get them as round as possible. A lot of people I've seen on the internet will get it sort of roundish and then just bend it together, you know, so the top's flat, but then when you straighten it out, you're putting a lot of tension on that solder joint, and the angles are completely different when it's round than when it's flat. So I always think it's really important to get it nice and round, so that the angles meet, the joint meets up really nice and tight in a, you know, a circle. These pliers are great for doing that. I also like, I know this is where it holds the metal all the way up, you can fix it at at 90 degrees, and it's quite easy to see because they're parallel, they're not tapered in or anything. It's quite easy to see that they're at 90 degrees, and you're getting the grip on the whole piece of metal. So again, it's not just at the bottom, it's in the whole piece. When you do get it at 90 degrees, it's easy to bend at that 90 degrees. With traditional ones, you're only holding at the bottom, so I am actually holding that quite firm in my pliers. When you've got to put a lot of force into bending something, you know, the tendency is that you'll sit round, you're not at 90 degrees anymore, you put that bend in there, you're making the ring all wibbly wobbly. And you want to keep it as even as you can, and it just makes everything else much nicer along the way. If you start off with something that's a bit, you know, but that'll do, later on it will come back and bite you, and you'll have to spend longer tidying that up. Whereas if you do everything nicely and it's perfect, it's not that'll do, it's perfect, you should save on cleanup time later. Yeah, I think they're a nice size. They are a bit bigger than my favourite pair of snipe nose parallels, but for these I do think that probably is better, because some ring shanks can be really sort of tough. If you're doing a 8mm wide wedding ring that's 2mm deep, you're really going to have to pull it about. And these, where the handles are thicker than, you know, your average plier, personally I find it a lot more comfortable to really sort of squeeze them tight. They don't dig into the hand as much. On my finger jointed half rounds, I like to put a groove in, bending up metal for collets. I'm not going to have this is going to be far too wide, but the groove, this is, I don't know whether you call this a tip or a, so I've got, on the inside I've got a little line cut out of the flat, and I've got a little line cut out of the half round, so that you can hold a bit of flat wire in it without it pinging about, and then bend that round so that you can make a tapered collet without collet punch. That could be quite a handy little thing to add into these. Another tip that I know a lot of people do, I do, but very, very lightly. A lot of people on the flat side, they'll buff down the edges. So you've got a nice crisp 90-degree angle on the flat, and people buff them down so that they don't dig into the metal as much. Certain pairs of these I will, certain pairs I won't, simply because I quite like the crisp 90-degree. Again, like I said, not so much on these. These I probably would buff the edges, but for me, buffing the edges down is literally just, you know, a bit of 800 sandpaper, wet and dry, and a couple of strokes up each side, just to take that real crisp edge off, but not to round it off. Yeah, so quick recap. Great for bending thick metal or any tough metal. I really like the shallowness of the angle of the half round, but then I do have multiple pairs, so obviously if I was doing a smaller ring I could, you know, use a different normal pair that are shallower, steeper curve. Yeah, all in all good. I quite like as well that they are wider. You know, your normal half rounds are nowhere near. These are a bit thin. That's thinner pair to be fair, but even normal ones are not as wide as that, which I think is quite nice. I do a lot of ring sizes. I do a lot of making of rings, and these are my go-to pair. It's only if I'm doing something that's really tiny that I'll go for a different pair. I've definitely been converted to these parallel ones. I think you just get a much better grip on the metal. It's easier to get a nice bend. It's good.